Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today we're going to be looking at a pretty sweet little ability that actually some people have built entire characters around, and that is known as Warcry. So Warcry is a kind of a weird ability because it is technically considered a spell, which means it is affected by faster cast rate, and you can get the faster cast rate up pretty high with this particular ability. In fact, let me go grab a Whizzy Spike, a Whizzy Glizzy, and throw that on this character too, so that I can show you the difference between, like, for instance, having 50% cast speed and having basically nothing. So I got a Whizzy right here, a little Wizard Spike. And there's a lot of little things about Warcry that you have to know if you're going to build a Warcry Barbarian. The first off is that it is physical damage. It is not a spell of any kind. It is actually physical. And it is, unfortunately, very physical in that physical immune monsters will completely stop the damage entirely, and you'll do basically nothing. On top of this, it also has a lot of synergies. So if you are going to build Warcry, you've got to invest 20 points in the skill, 20 points into Battle Cry, 20 points into Taunt, and 20 points into Howl, which is going to give you a pretty massive skill requirement here of 20, 40, 60, 80, which is going to use up most of your points. There is a little bit of a benefit, though, is that because Howl is a synergy with Berserk, if you would like to add a little bit of Berserk into your build, you can actually get a pretty decent level of Berserk by having that 20 points into Howl, because it's going to give you 10% per level. So 10, obviously, times 20, so you get about a 200% bonus to your Berserk damage from the synergy for Warcry. So you might want to at least put 1 point into Berserk for that reason. And then on top of that, you also get another 10% per damage level from Battle Orders, which you're probably also going to get as a Warcry Barbarian. So it kind of makes sense as a Warcry Barbarian to at least put 1 point into Berserk, since you have so many things that are going to give synergy bonuses to that ability. Now, Warcry itself does have a stun on it of 1 second, and as you level it up, you will notice that the stun does increase very nicely, and it goes all the way up to the point where it's about 10 seconds at level 46. It doesn't go any higher than 10-second stun. And if you're going to build a Warcry Barbarian, you're probably going to get this as high as you possibly can. As you can see right now, it's only about 1100 damage per cast. And we would definitely want to get that higher if we were going to use that as a main ability. It's not a very, far ability. It doesn't go very far. It's actually quite small. The range of it is actually only about 3.3 yards. 4.6 yards, which is very small. However, because it stuns, it's actually pretty easy to get the monsters to kind of, group around you. And as you can see here, it's definitely a lot faster with the Wizard Spike than without it. So as a Warcry Barbarian, you tend to build cast speed, and anything that gives you cast speed is probably going to make it into your build. And if it has cast speed and plus the skills, it's even better. Suicide Branches would make very good low-level items, because they give you a pretty massive amount of cast speed along with +1 to skills. So here's Eldritch right here, and as you can see, I can pretty much just lock stun the entire group, except for Eldritch. Eldritch doesn't get stunned, but the entire group does, and I'm not really in much danger here, because nothing around me is really getting hurt, hurting me, because they're all nice and locked in a permanent stun loop. You can increase the damage of this pretty exponentially by using the ability Grim Ward. Grim Ward, what it does is it actually increases my damage output with physical damage by quite a bit. So you'd have to put the synergy into Find Potion. And let's see here. We would have to obviously create a totem. And once the totem is up, everything will be very, very, very nicely damageable by my physical attacks. And to give you guys a more accurate example of this, let's go down here to Shank. Let's kill one of these little demon imps. Cast our totem. And you can see that our damage output is a lot higher with the Grim Totem up than without it. And this is due, in fact, to the fact that we get a nice negative 120% to the monster's physical resistance while Grim Totem is active. Very much so better than even amplified damage in this regard. Because since we're dealing out physical damage, we need ways to enhance that physical damage. Now, unfortunately, Grim Totem doesn't work on bosses. So despite the fact that we have our Grim Totems up, Shank is not going to receive that 120% increased. And then in this regard, Amplify Damage and Decrepify are superior because they do work on bosses, whereas Grim Totem does not. The stun effect is actually really nice, obviously, because you have the ability to just stun every monster nearby. And once you reach that 10-second stun mark, I mean, honestly, you can literally just spam it on multiple targets and lock down entire groups. You also have a lot of utility with Warcry. So you've got the Battle Cry, the Taunt, and the Howl commands, which are all going to be maxed out because that's what's required to get the most damage out of Warcry. And you might as well get the most use out of them. So Howl is going to make everything run away, which is extremely useful in Ubers and for picking out specific bosses because it doesn't make the bosses run away. Taunt is extremely useful for making monsters come to you, and in fact will overwrite even monsters like Gloams and force the Gloams to come to you. We covered this in the last video when we were doing Taunt. But if you haven't seen it before, let me give you a quick update because this is something that you're going to be taking advantage of as a Warcry Barbarian. And of course we don't have any Gloams here. Never any Gloams when I want them. Check World Stone. And there we go. So here I want to show you if I can actually survive this. Oh no. Too many Gloams. Too many Gloams. Always too many Gloams. Are you staring directly into my... Would have helped if I probably put some points into HP, which I didn't do. Always forgetting the HP pool. So here we have the Gloams here, and notice they're casting lightning on me, right? Well, if I cast Taunt on them, they no longer shoot lightning. No, I'm still slowly dying. No, stop casting taunts. Now, of course, my life tap is overriding the taunt. And this is also kind of a downside of the ability. I'm stuck in the middle of about 1,000 monsters. This character's set up for speed, by the way. This is Sanic the Hoochang. He's not set up for damage output. So with Warcry, you do have a plethora of other abilities which you can utilize, and you will usually also build Warcries. So for instance, if you're building like Warcry Charms, you have lots of plus to skills. Maybe you're even building things like a really nice off-buff set so that you have even more Warcries. You can usually get extremely high battle orders, extremely high battle command, and extremely high shout. And this means that you generally have a very high amount of skills in this category. So you also have really good shouts usually as a Warcry Barbarian as well, which means you have pretty good HP, you've got pretty good mana, and you know, you're just in general you're doing pretty good. And not only that, but the Find Item, Find Potion, and Grimward are also within this tree, which means that when you build your Warcries, you're also going to have a pretty healthy amount of Find Item as well, which means your Warcry Barbarian is probably going to end up being a Find Item Barbarian as well. There's really no getting around it. Just putting 1 point in Find Item is going to give you a huge plethora of plus to skills in this category, and you're going to end up with like level 25 Find Item with a 1 point investment, which is absolutely amazing. So in general, with this particular build, you have a whole lot of stuff that you can potentially do once you get everything built and satisfied. Now, it's not going to be like the most amazing, ridiculous killer, but everything's going to be stunned, and you have tons of other things that you can be doing as well. Like I pointed out earlier, you can put 1 point in Berserk, which will help you with the physical immunes. And since you're already building 2 of the literal synergies for Berserk, the damage on it should be pretty good. You could maybe have like a Grief or something on the other hand, specifically for Berserking. You also get the very nice Find Item benefit as well, and the very nice Shouts. And the utility of the Taunt and the Howl, which can definitely help you out when you're doing Ubers or when you're fighting Gloams. All of this together makes for a very strong build that, it's just kind of like a Paladin, like a Swiss Army knife character. You've got literally like a button for everything. There is a pretty big issue with Warcry, though, and it's involved in the mana cost. So the mana cost of Warcry is kind of insane, and if I were to sit here and just spam Warcry... let's see here. You can see that even with like 2,000 mana, which has some pretty insane regeneration rate at 2,000 mana, I'm still burning through it extremely fast. And most barbarians are not going to have 2,242 mana. This is a hero edited in character for testing purposes. So when you play this character on an actual real build, what you're going to find is that the character has a lot of issues maintaining that mana pool, because Warcry just has an insane mana cost. At its highest level, which is probably obtainable around like level, I want to say like 46, 48. That's usually about where you can usually get skills. It's almost about 50 mana per cast, I believe, which is kind of insane. And as you can imagine, right now, I'm already burning away most of that mana in a very short period of time with just the 26. So when it goes up to a higher level, you're definitely going to burn through some mana really fast. A lot of Warcry barbarians end up using meditation mercs, because there's really not a lot of way around it. The mana cost is just kind of insane, and even with the really nice battle orders increasing your mana pool and items that might help your regeneration, you're probably not going to be able to get away without using a meditation merc. Specifically because this build right now is not even using the max faster cast. So you have to imagine that not only are you spending almost like 50 mana per cast on this ability, but that once you hit like one of the higher faster cast breakpoints, you're going a lot faster than this. So you're spamming like literally almost like 4 or 5 Warcries like per second by the time you hit like 200% FCR. And the amount of mana that you can burn at that level is relatively insane. I think that pretty much covers everything for this ability. It definitely is one that is viable in Players 8. It's just not like the fastest ability in the game. But of course, like I said, there's other utility in the build besides just simply the Warcry. As always, thanks for watching, and keep watching.